And
my final question is
promise I will.
on the bombardment of the Israeli bombardment of an airbase
Yeah.
near Damascus. First of all, do you have any information on that?
I don't.
And why do you
I'm
think
aware of the
this-
reports. I'd have
this
to refer
happened?
you to the Israeli government. I just don't have any more details on it. I've
Do
seen
you
the
feel
reports.
that such a bombardment could exacerbate a very bad situation?
Look, I mean, again, until I learn a little bit more about what happened, we've obviously seen Israel has taken these kind of measures before when they've been threatened or received incoming fire from parts of Syria. I just don't have any more details to offer at this
An
point.
airbase next to
Yeah, please,
Damascus.
Brad. So in Syria,
How do you know that the war is going to go on?
again, it's our assessment. I mean, one could argue that the opposite, but there's this perception out there that Aleppo is, the coin of the realm or whatever the expression is, and that if you take it, that you somehow you're going to have peace in the land. It's our assessment that that's not the case.
Having your assessments in Syria been consistently wrong throughout this entire conflict? I mean, the secretary himself was among the people in Washington who thought Bashar Assad was a reformer. You thought his days were numbered after the conflict started. You didn't see the Russian intervention coming. You didn't see the growth of extremism in the ranks of the rebels. The president called the ISIS a JV team and didn't see that. I mean, you guys have been behind the curve on everything through 5.5 years. And then yet you're so sure of yourself on this.
So, Brad, the counter argument to that is, first of all, and I can go point by point, but what you've seen is an evolution of a conflict that at every twist and turn has only been exacerbated when it could have been resolved by Bashir al-Assad. And he has, Secretary talked about this yesterday. His reaction to peaceful protests only made them more violent. The violence begat more violence. And then you had, Syrian opposition, legitimate opposition, then taking up arms to defend itself against the Syrian regime's crackdown. He, as much as he has complained about or has argued that he's only fighting terrorism, is the instigator of much of this terrorism that has installed itself in Syria. And, with respect to Daesh, I would argue initial assessments aside, and I think you could argue that everyone underestimated Daesh's strength at the start. But I think a year and a half into our efforts to defeat and destroy Daesh, I think you can say that we've turned the tide against them. I'm not saying it's over by any means. But to get back to Syria, all I can do is say our assessment is that you need a pause in the fighting. If you get a pause in the fighting, it can become a credible ceasefire. If it can become a credible ceasefire, then you can have enough calm for the opposition to say, sure, we'll go to Geneva and talk again. I mean, this has always been, again, it has always been contingent on the parties involved in creating the atmosphere or the environment needed for political negotiations. And time again, and while I can't say the opposition hasn't been guilty in some cases of violations of the cessation of hostilities, time and time again, it's been the regime with Russia's help that has created the conditions that have led to these cessations of falling apart. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but while this conflict has escalated, especially in the last year or so, the situation on the ground has changed in that the regime and its backers have been on the offensive and they're regaining more and more territory. They're also limiting the conflict to smaller and smaller areas, populated areas in the country. So in a sense, at some point when there's no areas left that are contested, the war ends. Whether people are content or not, that could be totally valid, that people don't like the situation. But if they eliminate the places where people are fighting, then the war's over. And you know, the result that you wanted didn't happen.
Yeah, but again, I mean, look, we can argue this all afternoon, but, you know, you're not, we don't believe that current efforts to reach a military solution are going to be successful in Syria for a lot of different factors. And again, just to go back to your previous question, you know, yeah, it's been a very complex and ever-changing situation in Syria, but, you know, we've tried to adapt and respond to that changing environment. And one of the ways we did so was to create this group of stakeholders as a way to bring all sides, all parties to the table so we could discuss a way forward. We did that. We found a way forward, but in executing that or implementing that, we've been unsuccessful.
Regarding that airport,
Yeah, please.